For most of a lifetime, one belief went unquestioned. Reach America and you stay. Reach Germany, England, France, or Canada, and you hold on with both hands. That is where the money sits. That is where the doors open. That is where the future is supposed to live. Then 2026 broke the pattern. More and more people are not trying to stay at all. They are listing the house. They are emptying the account. They are handing in the notice. They are folding the last shirt into a suitcase. They are turning back toward the very place they once fought to leave. Here is what makes it hard to file away. The West did not turn poor overnight. The salaries out there are still bigger. Plenty of European countries are still calmer and steadier than what these people return to. So the question carries real weight. Why are more of them going home? And if it keeps spreading, it could rewrite how the whole planet pictures the Western dream. Let me be honest up front. The headline version gets it wrong. It says the West is collapsing. The comment sections get it half right and half furious. So today we do something different. We do the math. Slowly. Because once you see the calculation these people run, the surprise drains out. And something heavier takes its place. And let me say the quiet part too. If you came for a country to cheer or a villain to boo, this is not it. I am not here to crown one place and bury another. I've run the numbers. I ran them the way you would at a kitchen table near midnight. Numbers do not care about plagues. They care about what you keep. They care about who you keep it near. They care about how long you can last. So treat me less like a cheerleader, more like a friend with a calculator. That is the only honest way to look at this. Start more than half a century back. There was a race the world thought was already settled. Not a race for land. Not a race for weapons. A race for the sharpest minds on the planet. Say you were a sharp engineer in India, a doctor early in her career in Poland, a coder in Vietnam, a researcher in Brazil. The road to a good life seemed to run one way. Toward the United States. Toward England. Toward Germany. Toward the famous universities, the giant tech firms, the paychecks your own country could not touch. For decades, the West nearly owned four things: technology, education, career opportunity, quality of life. Lock all four in one place and the contest looks over before anyone laces up. But that held only while the gap stayed huge. An engineer in Bangalore earned a few $1,000s a year. An engineer in California earned 10 times that. The choice made itself. Starting a company back home was nearly impossible. The internet had not yet stitched the world together. Under those conditions, leaving was not a gamble. It was common sense. Then the conditions moved. By 2026, the picture is shifting fast. Not because New York or London fell off the map. The map grew new points of light. The rest of the world started closing the distance. Think of it this way. 20 years ago, leaving home felt like boarding one express train. One destination, painted on the front. Everyone crowded the same platform, pointed the same way. Today, there are stops that did not exist. Bangalore became a serious tech hub. Warsaw turned into one of Europe's fastest rising economies. Kuala Lumpur began drawing international firms. Ho Chi Minh City locked into the global supply chain as a link that matters. Mexico City caught the wave of factories moving close to the United States border. And notice what these cities did not do. They did not beat New York. They did not beat London. They only shrank the gap, just enough for a talented person to pause and ask one quiet question. Do I really need to live half a planet from everyone I love? That question is the whole earthquake. The talent race of 2026 stopped being rich country versus poor country. It became a contest over which places can make an ordinary life worth living. Once salary stops being the only number, something shifts. The things people file as secondary move up front. Time with family, the chance to own a home, the feeling of belonging somewhere. A future you can actually see coming. Hold that shift in your head. It is the lever under everything that follows. So if the home countries are rising, what is cracking on the other side? Where did the unbeatable Western lead start to split? Here we flip the usual reaction. People hear that immigrants are leaving the West for home. The first instinct is simple. The West must be in decline. It sounds reasonable. Look closer, and it falls apart. What is happening is not mainly that the West got poorer. It is that many home countries got richer, more modern, more crowded with opportunity than ever. Picture leaving in 2005. Back then, your birthplace might be short on jobs, thin on wages, rough on roads. The ceiling sat low and close. Now return in 2026. You might not know the place. New tech districts where there were empty lots, and airports stretching outward, highways tying the cities together, global firms setting up shop, cafes full of young people arguing about startups instead of plotting their way out. So here's the part people miss. Most returnees are not going back to the country they left. They land in a different country wearing the same name. That detail matters more than it sounds. You are not weighing your old memory against the new place. You are weighing a tired idea of home against the country it has become. A place that has been quietly rebuilding itself for years while you are gone. Most people never update the picture in their head. So when they finally return, the surprise is not that they changed. The surprise is that home changed too. Take India. For years, the image was a brilliant engineer flying off to Silicon Valley. Now Bangalore and Hyderabad have grown into tech hubs of their own. Plenty of people who build careers in the United States ran the arithmetic. They can build a near-identical career far closer to family, at a fraction of the cost. The dream itself flipped. For a lot of young people, the new dream is not leaving. It is coming back. India is not alone. Poland used to send millions of its young west for work. Now its economy is strong enough that something striking shows up. Poles are coming back. And Western Europeans are now arriving to settle and work there. Over in Vietnam, the middle class is swaying fast. Industrial zones keep spreading. More international firms keep planting bases. In Mexico, the supply chains are relocating, opening doors that were unthinkable a decade ago. All of it leads somewhere surprising. For the better part of a century, the West loomed like one tall mountain. Everyone was told to climb. By 2026, the world looks less like a single peak, more like a long ridge of many summits. And when there are more summits, people ask sharper questions. Suppose I earn 80% of what I make abroad, but I carry only 50% of the cost of living. Is that not the better deal? Suppose I live near my parents, raise my kids beside their grandparents, and still hold a real career. Why plant myself half a world from home? That is the math. Once you see it written plainly, you cannot unsee it. Run it again. The number does something cruel and clarifying at once. Earning a little less is not a loss. Not if the cost of living drops further than the pay does. That is the trick the expensive city hides. It puts the big salary in bright lights. It keeps the bills in the small print. Move the decimal back to the middle, where ordinary life actually happens. The poorer choice quietly becomes the richer one. Not richer on the paycheck. Richer in the part that reaches your account and stays. Now we step onto something immigrants and locals feel together. A strange modern paradox. Incomes in a lot of places keep climbing. Yet the sense of being well off keeps shrinking. Welcome to the deepest trap of this era. The high income trap. These people learned something they had never weighed. The figure that mattered was never the salary. It was the amount left standing after every bill took its cut. Picture the classic setup. An engineer earning $120,000 a year in the United States. A tech specialist in London, a financial analyst in Frankfurt pulling a paycheck that turns heads. It sounds like the finish line. Then reality walks in with its hand out. Rent, insurance, healthcare, childcare, tuition, tax. The price of getting anywhere. The price of simply existing. No single one is terrifying. Line them up though, and they behave like a row of taps. Each one drains the reservoir. Every month. On schedule. Until the big number at the top has shrunk into something that no longer feels big at all. And here is where the question changed. The old question was how much lands in your contract. The new question is how much survives the month. That is not a small shift. That is a different way of seeing your own life. A person can pull down $120,000 and still feel the floor tilt. Another earns far less back home, but owns the house, sits near family, and never watches most of the pay vanish before the month even starts. It sounds backward. It is exactly the math more people are running. And there is a mechanism under all this that nobody explains. So let me. In a high-cost place, the cost of living is not a fixed wall. You do not outrun it by earning more. It rises to meet the money. Land a raise, and the rent you can now afford climbs to swallow part of it. Move up a bracket, and a slice walks back out as tax. Earn enough to feel comfortable, and the comfortable version of everything quietly costs more. So the raise does not lift you. It gets absorbed. You climb, and the floor climbs with you. The distance barely changes. That is why people who keep winning on paper keep feeling pinned. And the worst part is how reasonable each step feels. The nicer place to live. The slightly safer street. The school you would not feel guilty about. None of it is greed. All of it is care. You are not splurging. You are trying to give the people you love a decent life. But every reasonable choice carries a price tag tied to the new income. So the better you do, the more the better version of life costs. And the gap you are trying to close never actually closes. Let me sit on healthcare a second. The brochure is never due. It is one item on the list of bills. But it behaves like no other. You can pay into insurance faithfully. Do everything the rules ask. And still get told at the counter that this one is not covered. You owe it yourself. You can pay a premium that hurts. And still wait months for an appointment. Months your body does not have. That is the part that breaks something, not the cost alone. The sense that you followed every rule, paid every premium, did everything right, and the system still handed you the bill. For a lot of returnees, that single moment does the work. It pushes them out the door harder than any spreadsheet could. And the trap is bigger than any immigration story. The pain is not only the immigrants. Plenty of people born and raised in the West say the same thing. They watch their own children struggle to reach what the last generation called ordinary, buying a home. That is a heavy signal. Once people doubt whether the next generation can move forward at all, something changes. The fear runs deeper than this month's invoice. It stops being about money. It becomes about whether the ladder still has rungs. And the fear casts a longer shadow than 1 month. Stretch the same trap across a whole working life. You get something quieter and heavier. 30 years of pouring effort in, doing everything the plan asked. And you reach the far end with a thinner cushion than the plan promised. The bills kept climbing. The pay kept getting eaten. The savings meant to carry the last chapter never stacked up the way the brochure swore. So people look ahead to the years that were supposed to be restful. And they see strain instead. That is a brutal thing to learn at 50. It is one of the loudest reasons a person decides the math no longer works. And it never shows up on a single bill. Now hold on. Here is the twist most people miss. A lot of these people are not leaving because they failed. They are leaving while they are winning. Some still hold excellent jobs. Strong incomes. Presumes other people envy. They walked because they figured out one thing. A high income no longer automatically buys a high quality of life. Picture the finest treadmill ever built. You run hard. You run long. You pour everything in. The belt blurs under you. You look up. You're standing in the exact same spot. That is the high income trap from the inside. Motion without movement. Effort without arrival. The realization is not that you are poor. It is that running faster stopped taking you anywhere. But strip away the salaries, the taxes, the rent. One thing keeps surfacing in the stories of the people who went back. It has nothing to do with a bank account. You cannot chart it. It shows up on no economic graph. What pulls them home is simpler than money. Family, familiarity, the plain feeling of belonging to a place. There is a quiet truth in it. People will live far from home for a chance at something. Staying away for a whole lifetime is a different matter entirely. When we are young, the sacrifice feels fair. We accept the distance from our parents. We accept the holidays that happen through a screen. We accept watching a grandchild grow up in photos pushed to a phone. The opportunity ahead looks so large that every cost seems reasonable. Then time does what time does. Parents age. Children grow. And the things we filed under temporary quietly stretch into years, then decades. So here's the wow point that catches everyone off guard. A lot of them come home at the moment they win, not the moment they lose. The stable job is already theirs. The good income is already in hand. They hold the life others are still chasing. And then it hits them sideways. They built the career, but they miss the moments the career was meant to fund. A meal at the family table, taking a parent to the doctor one afternoon, an hour of grandparents on the floor with a grandchild. None of that lands in a financial report. All of it lands in the decisions that change a life. And the cruel part is the timing. The career wants your best years right when your parents still have theirs. You trade the overlapping window. That one stretch where everyone you love is still here, still well. You trade it for a paycheck that will still be there long after the window is closed. Money is patient. It waits. People do not. A parent's good years do not reschedule around your next promotion. By the time the career loosens its grip and lets you breathe, the table has changed. Some seats are simply empty. No raise refunds that. There is another cost almost nobody writes down. The invisible fatigue of always adapting. A different language. A different culture. A different way of speaking. A different way of thinking. At first it is all new and electric. But years in, people start to miss something small and enormous at once. Walking into a room without explaining who they are. Hearing their own kids speak in familiar phrases. Living where the unspoken rules are already in your bones. Where you do not relearn the world from scratch every day. It sounds trivial. Sometimes the smallest things decide where a person settles for good, and it compounds in a way nobody warns you about. A stranger in a new place can stay a stranger a long time. You learn the language. You learn the customs. You can do everything right and still feel slightly outside the glass. For a year, that is an adventure. For a decade, it becomes a low background ache. Not pain exactly. Just a quiet sense of never fully arriving, no matter how long you stay. And loneliness deserves its own line in the ledger. The system never bills you for it openly. You feel rich on paper and alone. In fact, you can have the income and still eat alone. You can have the apartment and still feel like a guest in your own years. That cost does not bankrupt you in a month. It bankrupts you slowly, over a decade. And you notice the balance only when it is almost gone. And here is the trap folded inside the trap. Loneliness is the one expense you can always postpone. There is always one more year to grind, one more title to chase, one more reason to put off going home. So you paid on credit, quietly, year after year, telling yourself you will settle up later. Then later shows up, and it turns out to be the most expensive bill of all. The only one you cannot clear in arrears. That is the ledger more people are finally reading with honest eyes. And once they read it, the spreadsheet changes face. What looked like a win starts to look like a slow trade, one they never agreed to. Here is the point that opens it all up. When home develops fast enough, the emotional equation changes shape. The old choice was brutal and clean. Stay near family with fewer opportunities, or chase opportunity far from everyone you love. But stay home now offers real work, and a standard of living that keeps climbing. Then, for the very first time, plenty of people no longer face that choice at all. They can build the career and stay close to the people who matter most. Maybe that is why more of them land on the same conclusion. Success is not only how much you make. Success is also waking up somewhere that lets you feel at peace. And now the story turns where nobody expects. Everything so far has been immigrants heading home. But it is not only immigrants. A lot of people born and raised in the United States are making nearly the same call. They are not returning to a homeland. Their homeland is already under their feet. So they go looking for a new one. For years, the world treated America as the final stop. Now growing numbers of Americans are moving the other way. South to Mexico, down to Costa Rica and Panama, across to Thailand and Vietnam, chasing a lower cost of living. Say that 20 years ago, and most people would have called it a rare oddity. Today, it is a familiar thread on forums, on channels, in countless ordinary lives. Look at the symmetry. It is the whole point. The immigrants are heading back to the place they were born. Many Americans are chasing the exact feeling those same immigrants once crossed an ocean to find. The motives line up almost perfectly. An engineer goes back to Bangalore to be near family and shed the weight of high costs. An American moving to Mexico says the same thing in different words. A family returns to Poland to finally buy a house and get more hours with the kids. An American family in Costa Rica gives nearly the same reason. Different passport, different language, different culture, one shared calculation. How do I build a life that actually balances? That is the second twist. In the talk around this topic, people argue less and less about which place is richer. They argue about which place is easier to actually live in. And that is a massive shift in what people even bother to measure. And once you see the symmetry, you cannot stop seeing it. The immigrant heading home and the American heading out are not opposites. They are the same person standing in two doorways. Both looked at the life in front of them. Both ran the quiet arithmetic. Both decided the place they stood was charging too much for too little. One calls the answer going home. The other calls it going abroad. The word is different. The math is identical. And that tells you the force underneath has nothing to do with which country anyone started in. It is a deal that stopped paying out in a place that once felt like the only deal worth taking. And notice what neither of them is doing. Neither is running from hard work. Both are willing to work. They are running from a bad exchange rate. Not the currency kind, the life kind. Hours of your life on one side. What those hours actually buy on the other. When that rate gets bad enough, people move. They always have. They just used to move in only one direction. Through the last century, success got measured by one thing: how much you earned. Now people measure it against a different set of questions. Is there enough time left for family? Do I feel secure about what is coming? Am I just running to stay in place? And that leaves a strange double image. People who once left Mexico for opportunity in the States, Americans now moving to Mexico for a better life, passing each other going opposite ways. Asians who once dreamed only of the West. Westerners now choosing Southeast Asia to retire or work from. The world stopped flowing one way. It became a web, current running every direction, everyone reweighing what truly matters. So let us pull back and see the whole thing from above. Read only the headlines, and this looks like a story about immigration. People arrive. People leave. A country gains population. A country loses it. But go deeper. Immigration is just the visible tip. The real story sits underneath. A much larger contest. A contest over quality of life. In the 20th century, nations mostly fought to pull in workers. Which one had the most jobs? Which one paid the most? Which one ran the biggest economy? That was close to a winning formula. But moving into 2026, the rules are turning over. A country can spin up millions of jobs and still lose. Not if a home stays out of reach. Not if raising children feels like a fight. Not if the next generation sees no road ahead. The economic advantages start bleeding their strength. So here is a thing worth chewing on. People ask less, how much can I earn? They ask more, how can I actually live? That is a huge change. Because when the yardstick for success changes, the whole map changes with it. A country no longer has to be the richest on earth to pull people in. It only has to make ordinary middle-class people feel their lives are moving forward. A family that can buy a home, save a little, raise kids without the constant low hum of worry. It sounds plain. Those plain things are quietly turning into the most prized strategic assets of this century. And there is a paradox folded inside. People used to talk about brain drain, talent fleeing home for richer economies. Now, plenty of countries worry about the reverse. How do we keep our own people? Because it is not only immigrants who suddenly have choices, the locals have them too. Remote jobs, the digital economy, the way the world is wired together now. All of it has made packing up far easier than it used to be. Today's worker acts a little like a customer, browsing a shelf of life packages from all over the world. So what does livable even mean once you say it plainly? It is not luxury. It is not a beach in every photo. It is something more boring and far more powerful. It is seeing a doctor without dreading the bill. It is rent that does not eat the whole paycheck. It is enough hours left over to actually be a parent. It is the sense that next year might be a little better than this one. Boring on paper, decisive in real life. And that may be the biggest insight of all. The real crisis was never immigration. The real crisis arrives when more people feel the gap widening. The gap between the effort they pour in and the life they get back. Once that feeling sets in, they start looking for other options. It does not matter where they were born. Sit with that. It is the part the headlines keep walking past. The thing driving all of this is not a country. It is a ratio. Effort on one side, the life that effort buys on the other. For a long stretch, the ratio felt fair in the West. So people poured themselves in and stayed. Now, for more of them, the two sides have drifted apart. They put in more. The life on the other end gets thinner, and a person can endure almost anything, except the slow suspicion that the deal has turned against them. The moment that suspicion lands, the passport stops mattering. The map opens up, and they go hunting for a place where the ratio still makes sense. Which brings us to the question that outlasts the rest. It is not the count of how many people are leaving the West. That number will rise and fall with every cycle, every policy, every season. The bigger question is this: what happens when more people stop believing the best future lives in only one place? Through the past century, the world moved like one great river, one direction. Millions left home and flowed toward a handful of centers. That was the logic of the time. But 2026 shows a different shape. The river did not dry up. It split into hundreds of small channels. Some flow back to India, some flow back to Poland, some choose Mexico, some move to Southeast Asia. Some stay right where they are and only change what they believe success means. Maybe the thing dying here is not the American dream at all. Not Europe's pull either. Maybe what is dying is the oldest idea of all, that there was ever just one road worth taking. And the moment that belief cracks, everything downstream of it moves too. A founder in Warsaw, an engineer in Bangalore, an entrepreneur in Mexico City, a tech expert in Ho Chi Minh City. All of them now hold opportunities the last generation could barely picture. The world is turning multipolar, not only in economics, in where a good life is even possible. That is a threat and a gift at once for every country on the map. Think about what that means for the country you are sitting in right now. For most of modern history, the wealthy places could take their best people for granted. Where else would they go? That assumption is gone. The exit exists now. People know it exists, and a quiet number are already walking through it. So the old advantages still matter. The big economy, the famous cities, the bright salary, but they no longer hold anyone in place on their own. What holds people now is whether an ordinary life feels possible. That is far harder to manufacture than a high wage, and the countries that figure it out will quietly win the only contest that counts. And here is the part that should keep a few leaders awake. You cannot fake livable. You can advertise it. You can put it on a billboard at the airport. But people compare notes now. They see the real cost of a doctor visit. They hear what a friend kept at the end of the month. The marketing wears off in a single rent payment. What is left is the math. And the math gets harder to spin every year. So here is the question I leave with you, the one I keep circling back to myself. If a paycheck is no longer the only thing that decides where people live, If a strong career is no longer enough to hold the best people. If more of us put family, community, and stability first. If quality of life moves to the front of the line, then what is left for countries to compete on in the years ahead? Maybe the biggest race of this century is not about the tallest towers, not about the largest economy. Maybe it comes down to who can build the most livable place for an ordinary person. This was never really a story about immigrants. It is a question every one of us will end up answering for ourselves, sooner than we think. Where is home, actually? I would rather you sit with that question than let anyone hand you the answer.